Hey folks, how's it going? We're just gonna hang out for a couple minutes while people join, but then we will jump right into things. And if you can't see the participant number, then we're good. No, don't
Yeah.
don't look.
No, I do want to see this part though.
So if you tap the iPad like on the
Actually,
screen,
the
and then you'll be
screen.
able to see.
Okay.
There we go. Great.
Can I move
Very
this closer or
cool.
is this going to mess us up?
No, you
Good.
look wherever you
Okay.
need that is perfect. All right. And then, oh, awesome. That is helpful just so we can see.
Yeah, that's great.
Perfect.
That's great.
All righty.
Hi, everyone. Do
Cool.
you want to give it another couple minutes? Do you want to get started?
We can give it one more minute. Also, if you all want to make sure that the Q&A or the chat function is working, if someone wants to just throw in a quick question or a hello real quick, also let us know how our volume is because we can always adjust here while we got a minute or two before we start.
Hi.
All right,
Yep.
someone said hi. All right, so that's good.
Thank you,
Volume is
Becky.
good. Perfect. Um, Last time we did one of these chop and chats, we had some audio issues. I think they've all been fixed.
That I think we realized towards the end,
Yeah,
but hopefully, yeah, this time sounds loud and
we
clear.
should be good. So perfect. All right, great. A couple other questions. Great. Okay, people, chat is working. So wonderful. At any point during our little call today, feel free throw questions in the chat. We'll either kind of answer them as we go, or we'll definitely get to answering all of them before the end. But yeah, take advantage of that Q&A function. That is there for y'all. All righty.
Perfect. Just making sure everybody says it's good. All right,
Perfect.
cool.
All
All
right. I think we can go ahead and get started.
right.
So,
All right.
okay.
So, welcome to our second
Second, yeah.
chop and chat with Max and Nat. So this is something that we kind of started on a whim to, bring oncology nutrition research-based information to patients and families, but also reduce stress in the kitchen, make everybody feel a little bit more comfortable about, picking up a knife in the kitchen, actually cooking food at home.
Yeah.
So we felt it was kind of a nice little mix of both worlds to reach people that really need the information. So hopefully you're comfy at home. We're going to kind of cook. We're going to talk. Feel free to send some questions through, like we mentioned. But tonight's topic is going to be 5 tips for fighting cancer as a family. And I know this is always a big topic for me as an oncology dietitian at Smilow, because I'm talking to a lot of cancer survivors on a regular basis. And their big concern is, well, how can I cook for my family? How do I spread information to my friends and family about how to lower their risk of cancer and also prevent cancer recurrence in their own situation? So my name's Natalie. I'm one of the oncology dietitians at Smilow Cancer Hospital. I run the integrative medicine nutrition program and also the survivorship oncology nutrition program. And this is Max.
Yeah, I'm Max Goldstein. I am a chef and a registered dietitian. I run the day-to-day operations as well as all of the patient-facing classes here at the teaching kitchen, where we see patients from all across the health system. A lot of internal medicine, digestive health, heart and vascular, but also anyone from oncology if they ever want to be referred. Whether, wherever you are at in your journey there, like would love to have you in the kitchen. I think the things that we're going to be talking about tonight, very similar to what we do in person with the patients. And again, it's the idea of we're not here to tell you that you need to totally reinvent everything that you're doing or change everything that you're purchasing, but how can you make some really simple swaps, build some confidence in the kitchen, and make food that's still going to be delicious because food is still supposed to taste good and
Right.
evoke joy and be something that we can share with friends and families. So
Yep.
love that y'all are here. I do see a couple questions popping in. I just want to make sure that it's no one saying we got audio issues or anything.
Nope, no audio issues, just good
Perfect.
questions. So we'll get
Wonderful.
to those.
Perfect. Well, we can kind of address those questions as we go.
Yep. Do you
Great.
want me to jump into our
I
little
think
quick
let's
lesson
jump
and
into
then
our
yeah,
perfect.
perfect. So I'm going to start with a quick 5-minute nutrition kind of lesson, top 5 tips for fighting cancer as a family that I put together based on conversations that I have with patients on a regular basis. And what Max said is huge: progress over perfection. So social media, TV, there's all this information being thrown at you, especially cancer survivors. They're very susceptible to information. And we want you to know that you don't have to do all organic. You don't have to be, pulling vegetables from your own garden. You don't have to be, cooking sourdough bread from scratch to feel like you're doing something good for your health. So I put together just a few tips, and the things that we're going to cook today are going to go along with those common tips that we're going to go over. So number one is cut out processed meats. Mm-hmm. So we know from research that consumption of processed meats, so that's deli meat, that's bacon, sausage, prosciutto,
hot
dogs, exactly. Those foods that are highly processed meat products are directly linked to increased risk of colorectal cancer. So many times, right? I have little kids at home. I see, lots of turkey sandwiches, ham sandwiches, people that are trying to lose weight, trying to incorporate more bacon and sausage at breakfast. So a big topic that I discuss with oncology survivors is working on moving those out of the diet and replacing those with plant-based alternatives, beans, tofu, hummus, nut butters, peanut butter, many, many options that we can replace those things with. So that's a big one. So you're not going to see any processed meats in the recipes that we're making tonight. So that's number one. Number two is replacing refined or white carbohydrates with whole grain alternatives. So instead of choosing white bread, white wraps, we really want to replace those with whole grain options. So whole grain can be whole grain crackers, it can be whole grain bread, it can be popcorn. When you're looking at that nutrition label under ingredients, that first ingredient should say whole wheat or whole grain to know that it's truly a whole grain product. Yep. There's a lot of like misinformation, and you'll see 9-grain bread or 12-grain bread, but if that first ingredient on the list doesn't say whole grain or whole wheat, then it's not technically a whole grain product. It just has multiple grains.
Yep. And sometimes, honestly, what they can do is, and even the great example is like wheat bread. Wheat bread's just made of wheat flour, right? But sometimes they'll kind of be tricky, and they're like, oh, they'll add something like molasses to turn it brown. Mm-hmm. And I think inherently we're like, oh, brown food is healthier for us, right? But it is, like Natalie said, you got to flip over that ingredient list, and you want to try to find the whole grain or the whole wheat as that first ingredient.
Right. And white bread and whole grain bread are really the same calorie content and the same carb content.
Yep.
So it's not about macros or calories. It's more bang for your buck because you're getting more fiber, more nutrients in the whole grain bread to help you feel fuller longer, to regulate blood sugar, lower cholesterol levels. So there's just, the list goes on how much more beneficial those whole grain products are.
Yep.
Number three is building dinner meals around vegetables, which we tend to not do. So we always tend to build that grocery list off of what meat we're going to do, pork, chicken, fish, whatever that's going to be. But try as a family to shift the mindset and try to pick out, 2 to 3 different vegetables for the week that you're going to then base your meal off of. So maybe you try broccoli one night, Brussels sprouts another night, purple carrots. So really trying to just make the focus plant-based versus always looking to the meat to provide the bulk of the meal. Fourth is reducing added sugar consumption. So you'll see it tonight with a couple of the recipes too. Simply making food at home, you're going to cut out a lot of added sugars that are added to products just to make them taste good. So added sugars are from sweetened beverages, juice, soda, Gatorade, candies, pastries, Oreos, ice cream. So a lot of, again, very tasty things, but an overconsumption of these foods are being linked to diabetes, obesity, weight gain, which is then linked to an increased risk of many types of cancer that are weight-related cancers. So how do we reduce added sugar? Choosing plain yogurt versus strawberry-flavored yogurt in the grocery store and adding strawberries on top.
Of course.
You can purchase protein bars that have fewer grams of added sugar on the label. Again, it's very tricky on that label, but it should say includes this many grams of added sugar, and just trying to keep that number as low as possible. And replacing juice and soda with seltzer with a splash of cranberry juice, or, milk, coffee, tea, those kind of options.
And sometimes sugar sneaks in products where we don't expect it. Like, they're kind of like insidious sources of sugar. So sometimes even like condiments and dressings can have a surprising amount of sugar added to them. And that's a result of, in the standard American diet, we're kind of used to these like very sweet, very salty, very fatty foods. And so we we become aware when food kind of has like the normal amount of sugar versus what is maybe considered an added amount of sugar. And we're going to make a dipping sauce for one of our recipes tonight that has a little bit of sugar in there because a little sweetness is fine, but way less than we would get in like the store-bought alternative.
Right. And the goal is not elimination. There's no way you're going to completely eliminate added sugars out of your diet. This is just being aware. And I think when we have awareness and we're actually paying attention to the things that we're doing, that makes way for progress and swaps and, very easy changes to not feel overwhelmed. Because if you feel overwhelmed with nutrition and you feel like it's not achievable, there's no way you're going to even start. You're not going to take that first step. So today, hopefully we can kind of get you over that hump to make you feel like you can start to do some of these things and not feel so overwhelmed.
Yeah, great.
And then the last one is increase fruit and vegetable intake. We already know that kids, adults were not reaching the goal for fruit and veggie intake per day. And we know from a lot of data, and if you're looking for specifics or data, research has been done, AICR.org, the American Institute for Cancer Research, is a great resource to utilize. But the recommendation is 25 to 35 grams of dietary fiber per day. And we're not reaching that, but we know that reaching that number can lower a risk of cancers of the GI tract, breast cancer, the list goes on. So not, again, about what do we cut out, but what do we need to add in to offer benefit to our health and lower our cancer risk. And again, it can be frozen, can be canned.
Yeah, as we're going to talk about.
There's so much out there about don't do canned. There's got to be modifications. So not everybody, things are so expensive. So we also need to find ways to cut costs and also still reap the benefit. So, those are the top 5 things. So
fantastic.
Now we'll lead in.
And then, of course, y'all, if you have any questions about any of that through any point when we're on here, send them our way. If you got questions about kind of what we're doing, let us know. So we're doing like 2.5 recipes tonight, and then tomorrow we are going to send out that list that Natalie developed, as well as a whole slew of recipes, some handouts, all from the teaching kitchen here. We just wanted to show some of them tonight. And so one of the recipes that we're going to be doing is we're going to be making some homemade chicken tenders. Obviously great for kids, right?
Absolutely.
But also I will be eating these leftover chicken tenders tomorrow for my lunch. They're oven baked. We're going to talk about kind of some of the things that we're adding or doing to kind of increase that fiber consumption that we're aiming for. To go with that, we're going to make a homemade ranch dressing. That ranch dressing is primarily going to be yogurt based versus something that we might buy in the store, which is effectively just mayonnaise in a bottle. Not to ruin store-bought dressings for people, but Caesar dressing, ranch, blue cheese, all of those are primarily oil and a little bit of egg in there. That's what mayonnaise is, just with different flavorings. So we're gonna make a nice homemade ranch to dip in that. And then we're also gonna make a pasta dish tonight, effectively a one-pot pasta. I did cook the pasta separately, but you could absolutely cook it all in one pan or, cook that pasta beforehand, have it ready to go. So I got my little prep out in front of me here. My oven is preheated. I think we'll go ahead and we'll start with those chicken tenders.
Okay.
And so we're going to do what is effectively our normal kind of breading procedure. So Danielle, if we want to, and my intern Danielle this week is manning the camera. So if you hear me talking to somebody, that's who I'm talking to. So here, anytime that we're going to be doing any kind of breading, chicken cutlets, eggplant parm is a favorite of mine, great way to increase vegetable consumption. Anytime that we're going to be doing the breading, I like to put the breadcrumbs and the egg into these high wall containers here. So this is a little glass baking dish, whatever you got at home is fine. But I like having these because as I'm moving the breadcrumbs around in here, they're not going to end up all over my workstation. And then one really great way, anytime, again, if you're doing any kind of breading that you can really increase some flavor is by adding a couple things directly to those breadcrumbs. So to these breadcrumbs, we're going to add a few ingredients. I got some garlic powder here. I've got a little bit of dried thyme. And then we're going to do just a tiny amount of salt and pepper. Sometimes people, especially as they're trying to be a little more conscious about their health, sometimes they feel like they got to eliminate salt entirely. Not the case. Salt, which is our primary source of sodium. Sodium is an essential nutrient, right? We have to have it in our diet. Sometimes we go overboard, and that's where we need to make some modifications. Yep. So we're adding a very small amount of salt to these breadcrumbs here. We can be a little bit more liberal with our other spices. So garlic powder, like I said, some thyme. We're going to save some of this time for another recipe later, and then some black pepper as well. And then in addition, one ingredient that we're going to add to that, just to add a bit more flavors, we're going to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese. Now, certainly, we're talking about convenience. You can buy the Parmesan cheese in the shaker bottle, right? It's cheese at the end of the day. I do have a little block of Parmesan cheese here that I'm then just with my little grater here. So this tool is known as a microplane. Sometimes you'll see it as a, also called a zester, right? Typically, right, for zesting a lemon. It works really great if you don't want to bust out the whole large, cheese grater block. This can be a really great tool. And so what we're going to do is just grate some cheese in there. Not a ton. We're probably looking for about 2 or 3 tablespoons. And this is over a cup of our whole wheat breadcrumbs here. And this is going to be, this recipe, we're using about 1 pound of chicken breast, which gives us, a couple servings of our little tenders that we're going to be making. But this one scales up really well. And I particularly like these chicken tenders actually freeze very well. So after you bake them, you can kind of get some prep done, right? If you're already getting the oven on and you're already making the chicken tenders, you may as well do a larger batch if you got the ingredients on hand. And then with your hand or with a spatula, we're just going to go ahead and give this a little stir, really get those nice flavors mixed in with our breadcrumbs. And now you may have noticed, right, these breadcrumbs look maybe a little darker than what you would usually buy at the grocery store. That's because these are actually whole wheat breadcrumbs.
Yep.
So we're talking about increasing our consumption of dietary fiber, right, because it is linked to reduced risks of certain types of cancers if we can really hit those dietary recommendations for fiber. So that's why we're using whole wheat breadcrumbs. Can typically be a little harder to find at the grocery store. These ones happen to be whole wheat panko breadcrumbs. Regardless, even if you can't do the whole wheat breadcrumbs, one thing I recommend is if you're buying breadcrumbs, try to buy unseasoned ones and add the seasonings yourself. Most of the seasoning that they are adding to whole wheat breadcrumbs is just salt. And you can get a lot more diverse with the flavors and decrease your sodium consumption. So I got 1 tray here. That's our breadcrumbs ready to go. I got another tray here. This is a couple eggs just beaten together. Into your eggs, another great opportunity to add some flavor. So if I was at home, what I might do is I might add a little hot sauce into my eggs here and whisk them. So that way then my chicken tenders, rather than dipping them into hot sauce, they're kind of naturally spicy a little bit. Great if you or kids at home prefer, like the spicy tenders from Popeyes, right? You can do this at home kind of as an alternative. And then I have my chicken breast here, which all I did is I took 1 chicken breast, I cut it up into, little bite-sized pieces, maybe about the size of my thumb, right? And then anytime that we're doing any kind of breading, where we are going to be moving an ingredient through the eggs into the breadcrumbs onto a sheet tray, what we want to do is try to have a wet hand and a dry hand ready to go, so that what we can do is we keep that one hand from getting really clumpy and filled with breadcrumbs, right? So what I'm going to do is take a couple pieces of our chicken here, get them into my egg wash. And then because I'm touching the chicken and because it's going into the egg, and identify my left hand here as my wet hand. And you just want to get those pieces nice and evenly coated with those whisked eggs.
I will say too, get the kids involved too.
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely, right?
I think part of it is parents feel overwhelmed because it's going to take a lot of time away from the kids, but get them involved. They would love to mix that Parmesan or shred the Parmesan or, get their hands dirty. I think as long as you're willing to let them get messy.
Absolutely. Plus, I think there is a decent amount of research out there that shows if you can get kids involved with the food that they're eating, they're more likely to want to try those things.
Yep.
So I've taken some of my pieces of chicken here. Again, I'm using my left hand because that's my wet hand to get those into the breadcrumbs. And then with my right hand, my dry hand, I'll go and I'll kind of just evenly toss. I'm getting a nice even coating around all of these. Part of the thing I like about these panko breadcrumbs is that they're pretty much the same as regular breadcrumbs. The pieces of bread are a little bit thicker, a little bit more, there's a little more texture to them. They're not as fine or as coarse. So you get kind of those nice, craggly pieces that you would sometimes get with something like fried chicken, right?
Yeah.
And then all I'm going to do is move them over here. I got a little prepared baking sheet there with just a piece of parchment paper. And I'm going to get these all done and pop them into the oven, which I got preheated to about 400 degrees. This absolutely works at home with whatever oven you've got. But I will say, we just passed the holidays. So if you were lucky enough to get gifted an air fryer, great opportunity, right? Yep. What air frying is basically, it's if you have an oven that does convection, air frying is basically the same thing. So it's like a normal oven, but then there's a fan in the back, and that fan moves the hot air around more rapidly. And what that does is it promotes things getting a little bit crispier, a little bit faster, because that oven stays hotter for longer. So I think we can kind of zoom back out as I'm going down the line here and getting this other chicken ready to go.
Recommendation for a good gluten-free.
A good gluten-free. Okay, I mean, so go ahead.
Rice, I mean, even like Rice Krispies. Like I've seen people use
absolutely.
Rice Krispies.
Cornflakes work very well.
Yep.
You could also certainly make your own if you had the time. Of course, we're all in the mode of saving time today. So of course, making your own breadcrumbs might not be realistic.
They do have the gluten-free panko ones that I've used, and they are actually really crispy.
Yeah.
They actually get the chicken really crispy. So that's
absolutely. And then if you were ever interested in making your own breadcrumbs, basically what you would do is you would take some bread. Works best with stale bread because you're not going to eat it anyway. Then you pop that bread, cut it into little pieces, pop it in the oven so that it gets, nice, and you basically want it to be dehydrated, like ready to shatter if you were to drop it. And then what you do is you pop those pieces of bread into something like a large food processor and pulse it down until you have bread.
Which would be so easy for gluten-free because the bread is so dry.
Yeah, exactly. That is very true. Yeah, perfect. All righty. Any other questions that have come through?
So far.
Perfect. All righty. Now, one thing, obviously, as we're making the chicken tenders here, I think the obvious comparison that people might draw or question they might wonder about is, well, why don't I just buy, chicken tenders at the grocery store, right? If we're talking about saving time, there really is, it's truly like you would save more time doing it at the grocery store. But you'll notice, like, I'm basically done. I have one little batch of chicken left to go here. I've been doing this for 5 minutes, maybe. It'd go faster even if you had helpers at home, right?
But what we actually just looked at the Tyson chicken tenders, right? We compared the nutrition labels before we got on here, and these were less calories, way more fiber, less fat, less sodium.
Yeah. So pretty much all the things that you were talking about at the beginning there, right? And of course, and actually the serving size on these was bigger as well. The Tyson chicken nuggets, the serving size was about 3 ounces, which is actually a very reasonable serving size. Generally speaking, when we're talking about our animal proteins, whether it's chicken or anything else, we think of that serving size as being like 3 to 5 ounces, right about in there. It's about the size of a deck of cards, fits in the palm of your hand very well. But the serving size on these tenders is 4 ounces. So you actually get to enjoy a little bit more and with still less calories, less fat, more fiber. So truly more bang for your buck here.
Right.
And like I said, those very quickly preps in large batches very well. And then you can customize the flavor, right? You don't have to try to find some kind of like special version at the grocery store. If you want them spicy, and maybe add a little cayenne, maybe add a little hot sauce into your chicken. And you'll see, right? I got pretty easily here. I got one little sheet pan filled up. I'm going to pop these in the oven. And then by the time that we are done tonight, I'll have nice little crispy, delicious pieces of chicken for us to sample. So I'm going to wash my hands real quick, and then I'm going to pop that in the oven. Alrighty. Right. So like I said, I got my oven going to around 400 degrees. These are going to go in there for about 10 to 15 minutes. And while we're doing that, we can talk about some of our other recipes tonight.
We had a question too. What do I look for when buying chicken? There are so many types. Same with eggs.
Great question.
Yeah, really great question. So research shows that purchasing organic over non-organic is not necessarily more nutritious. I think if you have local options, so local eggs, local chicken that you can purchase, that's obviously the best option because you have more control over, how the chickens are treated and processed and all of that. Really, I guess it's up to your comfort level and also your budget. So if it's between not buying chicken because you can't afford it, because you can't buy the organic chicken, it's too expensive, or, not doing it at all, I would say just buy the regular non-organic chicken.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
Same with eggs. I mean, it's the same thing. There's truly nothing we've identified in research that shows that the organic egg is more nutritious. It's really just personal preference. But I would say if you can't afford organic eggs, get regular eggs, get regular chicken.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even we could get into a little discussion about like chicken thigh versus chicken breast, right?
Or skin on versus skinless.
Yeah. Well, so
right?
all right. So when it comes to the thigh versus the breast, I mean, very comparable amount of protein. The thigh tends to have a little bit more fat, right?
Yep.
It's not to say that fat is the bad guy, but something to be conscious of.
Right.
I think where the more interesting conversation is maybe the skin on versus the skin off. Do you want to talk about that while I gather my ingredients here a little?
Yeah, just leaving the skin on is it's gonna contain more fat, right? More fat content. So if you're really looking to be more heart healthy, heart conscious, or heart disease in your family, trying to lower your LDL cholesterol or your total cholesterol, then removing the skin would be very ideal.
Yep.
If you have, young kids, you're not so concerned about this, then, skipping that step would be fine.
And sometimes, I will say a piece of chicken with the skin on, it tastes really good, right? It's crispy, right?
Yep.
In my head, if I can do that chicken thigh or the chicken breast and it's got the skin on, but then I'm pairing it with like a lot of vegetables and that skin is making that whole plate just more palatable.
Yeah.
Right? Like if we're getting those veggies in there that maybe wouldn't otherwise be.
Yeah.
Overall, still a thumbs up, we think.
I say the same thing with like salad dressing. People always come to me, they're like, well, what's the best salad dressing? And I say, well, what salad dressing makes you eat salad?
Yeah.
What makes you look forward to salad?
Yeah, because the salad dressing doesn't counteract the vegetables.
No.
So they don't cut each other out.
Right. It might have 4 grams of added sugar, but again, if that Italian zesty dressing helps you eat, 2 full cups of lettuce and cucumbers and tomato and, tofu, then go for it. Right? Like, who are we to say to not do that?
Absolutely. Great question though. So perfect. So if we come back down to my cutting board here, I am going to start working on our pasta recipe. I'm going to see, I got 12 minutes on my chicken timer. I'm going to see if I can get this whole thing done in 12 minutes, just to show how easy it is. So I've got a pan heating up on the stove to the right of me. They're just a big saute pan. Right now I got it on a low heat just to kind of start going. When I get to start cooking, I'll raise that heat. I got some cloves of garlic here. I'm going to show a really easy way to mince this, though some chefs get on their high horse about it a little bit. I am not opposed to jarred garlic or jarlic, sometimes as it's called.
Is there a difference?
Yeah, so I mean, the jarred garlic might be in a little bit of oil. So that's just something to be conscious of. Maybe all that means, though, is that when you're going to cook, maybe you just add a little less oil to the pan because you know that there's some in your garlic already. Otherwise, nutritionally, it's the same thing. I think it still tastes plenty good. But if you're interested in knowing how to easily mince your garlic, what I recommend is bring it to the edge of your cutting board here, almost to the point where it's off, and then rest your knife on top, and then to the point where the handle is also off the cutting board. Sometimes what folks might do is they take their hand way up high and they like slam it down on the knife. You don't actually have to do that to crack your garlic. All we're going to do is rest our knife on top, maybe angle that blade slightly down just for safety. Rest our heel of our other hand on top and then give a nice press. Get a nice little crack there. I hope the microphone picked it up. But then you'll see that skin of our garlic comes off all in one nice piece. The garlic lays there. Those pieces of garlic skin I will set off to the side. Maybe if we have time, we can talk about some uses for our vegetable scraps, like making vegetable stock. We can circle back around to that. So same thing. Garlic here. Sometimes when garlic tends to get a little older, like these pieces are, the ends of the garlic will be a little more dried out. So we can always give that a little trim and set that off to the side. And then I want this minced, which really just means small pieces. They don't need to be uniform. So I'm going to just give this a couple rough chops, right? And something that we love to talk about in the teaching kitchen here, right, is of course our knife skills. Getting good practice there, always making sure our hand is safe. You notice that thumb and the pinky are tucked behind my other fingers there. But so I got my garlic roughly chopped here. And then to mince it, what you're going to do is set your knife off to the side, rest your hand on top. For me, I tuck my thumb in so I don't accidentally cut it, rest it on top there. And then I do a nice little rocking motion back and forth through my garlic here. And it depends. If you want a little bit more pronounced, like kind of raw garlic flavor, you could leave these pieces a little larger. but you can also go as small as you want, especially if you tend to not tolerate garlic as well. Finely chopped, a little bit better tolerated. And if you don't tolerate fresh garlic, certainly a little bit of powdered dry garlic is fine as well. We got our nice little chopped pile here. You can use a knife to pick it up, but also I love using my bench scraper here. Typically, you'd see it in a bake shop for cutting pieces of dough, but also works really well as a really nice, easy surface to pick things up off your cutting board. I don't always love to tell people that you need to go out and buy every fancy kitchen gadget. This one's pretty handy, especially it's just so easy to grab. It's got a nice thick handle there. So we got that. And then the other vegetable that's going into our pasta is this beautiful kale here. Now, I usually would buy green kale at the grocery store. Couldn't find it this time. This kale has purple stems. Nutritionally, they're all pretty much the same. Different colors of vegetables do give us different micronutrients and the phytochemicals. So there is technically something to be said about if you can find purple kale, great. I mean, it looks pretty. It's going to look really pretty in our finished dish. But if you can't find fresh kale, frozen kale works just as well. And if you don't love the taste of kale, I get it. It's a little, sometimes for people, it's a little much.
It can be intimidating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spinach works just as well, right? A dark leafy green in this vegetable is really what we're aiming for. And spinach, especially for kids, might be a little more tolerated.
Yeah.
But if you want to zoom back in on the cutting board here, I just want to show y'all what I'm going to do with this kale. So it's going into a pasta dish. The stems down here at the bottom of the kale, this is a little more dried out, tough. You can't, like, I'm squeezing it between my fingers and I can't even crush it. But if I come up to these stems up here nearby the leaves, a little bit more delicate. And so what I'm going to do is actually just give one nice clean chop and get those bottom stems off and out of the way. And then I'm left with this bit up here. Now, if you, for any reason, if you have any kind of digestive issues, maybe you can get rid of those stems entirely and kind of just cut the leaves off either side there. Very little waste to set aside here. And then we'll get a nice little pile of our kale greens. And then as you get confident, you could really do a couple leaves at once, right? Sit them all kind of on top of each other with those stems lined up. Take your knife down on one side and then take your knife down on the other. And then you can always come in and do a little bit of cleanup here on there and just get those thick stems out of the way. The stems are edible, absolutely. It is more of a tolerance thing. Again, they're kind of tough, really chewed on. And if you're going to cook the stems, that's kind of where we're going to do like a low and slow, where you want to cook for a very long time. Whereas for here, we're doing a pretty quick cook because we're going to cook it just in our pan.
If you did a salad with this, you would do the same thing?
Yeah, very similar. I would take the stems off. I would just use the leaves. And then if I was making a salad, what I would actually do is I would massage the kale, which sometimes I think people feel like sounds a little silly. But kale, if you've ever tried to eat it raw, kind of is like a little like tough and bitter, right? Cooking it helps relax that a little bit, but then also the massaging it. So what I would do is I would take a towel, lay it down, put my chopped leaves on that towel, then rest another towel on top, and then literally like give it a massage for a couple minutes. That helps release some of the gases, which contributes to the bitterness, makes it a little more palatable, easily digestible. So, but yeah, you can absolutely enjoy raw kale.
Some people massage it with olive oil. Is that necessary?
I've seen that before. I don't think it's necessarily necessary, but I do like that. If it's gonna make you, again, it's gonna make you eat the vegetables, then go for it. So, great question. So, Danielle, I think we can zoom back out while we're chatting here because I think folks get the idea about what I'm doing here. Doing on time. Probably a couple minutes behind. That's because I'm yapping. That's all right.
The chat part.
Exactly. That is the chat part of the chop and chat. Exactly. Perfect. And then of course, we love the color of the dark leafy greens that it's contributing to our dish, but nutritionally, we're talking about increasing our fruit and vegetable consumption. Why do we love the dark leafy greens so much?
Oh, I mean, again, antioxidant content. Then we add the fiber content in there. It's just we tend to go for the same things. We tend to go for the same, tomatoes that we buy every week or cucumbers. So the more vibrant colors means they're richer in these phytochemicals, these antioxidants, these micronutrients. So try to venture out, try to change something up, try something different. Again, I'm, the first one to admit I'm not normally cooking with kale because, kids might not accept it as easily, right? But I think it's great to just expose them to it, maybe keep it out of their portion of the food and just try to get them to try it out.
Yeah. kids are more likely to eat the food if they see the
Oh,
adults eating it,
absolutely.
right? So,
Yep. Lead by example.
yeah, exactly. Great opportunity for you to try something new as well. So I got a couple cups of greens here. I kicked up the heat on my pan a little bit and added just a tiny amount of olive oil. I'm really talking like less than a tablespoon. You don't need much. These greens, as they cook, are going to give up a decent amount of water, so that'll help prevent sticking. And you'll notice if we zoom in on the pan, you might be able to kind of see I got that little pool of oil in there. As this pan continues to heat up, that oil will actually kind of naturally expand to coat the bottom of the pan. Sometimes what people see when you read recipes, especially if you're like following a blog online or something, and it'll say like, oh, coat the bottom of a pan with olive oil. So people think they need to, while that pan is cold, add a ton of olive oil into there. It's actually the case that olive oil, like all sources of fat, will kind of naturally expand as it heats up. So it's actually kind of naturally growing and going to cover the bottom of that pan. So you can get away with using a little less oil than you think you might need. So I got my oil heating up there. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add all my greens at once. You want to hear a little bit of a sizzle when they get in there. That means our pan was hot enough. I'm actually going to add my chopped garlic at the same time. I am not cooking these for very long, 2 or 3 minutes. I just want the greens to wilt a little bit and for that garlic to get fragrant. And then on my cutting board, I have a little bit of like kind of these errant pieces of greens here. I use my bench scraper, get those into the pan as well to cut down on our food waste. No better way to save money than trying to utilize as much of our food as possible. And so we get a nice little sizzle here. These greens, just like if we were cooking, spinach, they're going to lose a lot of volume as they cook. So this will not take very long. I got those in there. And then while that is getting ready to go, I will talk about the other ingredients that we've got. So this is a pasta with greens and beans. So this is a can of cannellini beans. I did not buy dry beans and soak them and then boil them, right?
Wow.
Because who has the time to do that? So this is literally a can of beans, drained and rinsed, because sometimes canned beans will have a lot of sodium on them.
Yep.
Draining and rinsing in a colander gets rid of a lot of that extra sodium, so we don't have to worry about that. But otherwise, normal can of beans. I've also got half of a lemon here, in the effort to cut down maybe on our sodium consumption, our salt intake, right? Oftentimes, what a lot of people will point towards is, well, you can use other spices and herbs, which you absolutely can. But adding citrus in the form of something like our lemon juice is a really great way as well to make our food taste like it's got a lot of flavor without increasing the sodium.
Right.
And then really the only other ingredient that I've gotten here is we're going to have a little bit of vegetable stock. I believe the recipe does call to use a little bit of white wine to deglaze the pan. I'm using vegetable stock for a couple of reasons. Number one, I just don't always have alcohol on hand that I want to cook with. But if we're talking about decreasing or even potentially eliminating our alcohol consumption, which I don't think was one of your items, but I know you talk about with patients.
Discuss. So yes, I recommend people limit as much as possible. Like even if you go to aicr.org, they'll recommend, 1 drink a day for women, which is equivalent to like a 5-ounce glass of wine or a 12-ounce beer, 1.5 ounces of liquor. For men, it's 2 servings of alcohol per day. But in general, we know that any consumption of alcohol is linked to increased risk of 6 different types of cancer directly. So I tell people, just cut it back as much as you possibly can. So if you're somebody that normally cooks with white wine, maybe you do try this vegetable stock instead.
Yeah. The real purpose is not to, you're certainly not going to get drunk on it, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's not why we're adding it. We're adding it to do a technique known as deglazing, which is where, and if we bring our camera around to look at our pan, maybe we'll see kind of right in the middle. It might be a little hard to tell. We're going to sit some little brown bits stuck on the bottom of our pan. That is the French term for that is fond, F-O-N-D. But basically, everything that sticks on the bottom of your pan when you're cooking vegetables, when you're cooking meat, that's like flavor. That's basically adhering itself to the pan.
Smells good too.
Yeah. And so we want to get that flavor off the bottom of our pan into our dish. So deglazing is where we introduce a liquid to the pan in order to release all that stuff from there. Typically done with wine because it's a French technique. So of course, right? But you could do it with water. You could do it with vegetable stock. If you just had water on hand, but you wanted a little bit more flavor to it, add a squeeze of lemon juice to that water, right? all of it is, it's the primary goal is to get the stuff off the bottom of the pan and then to flavor what is in there. So I'm going to check our chicken tenders. I lost my bet with myself by a minute or two here, but we are almost done. Let's see, pull those out. See, we can definitely tell if we bring the camera over to the middle, Danielle, we can see that they are starting to get nice and crispy there. I'm going to give these a couple more minutes just to brown. I promise the pasta will be done by then. Give that maybe 5 more minutes. The nice part is those pieces of chicken are cut so small that we'd be very hard pressed to undercook them. And because they're also smaller, they're a little more forgiving to overcook. So kind of a happy medium. As long as you don't forget about them in the oven, they'll be good. So I got my greens. You'll notice they've wilted here quite a bit. And then what's going to happen, Danielle, when we come in and we introduce a little bit of liquid, we're going to get some steam. A nice sizzle there. And all that liquid then with something, I'm using a spatula just because it sounds a little nicer on camera than a metal spoon. But use that to get all that stuck bits off the bottom there. Instantly kind of releases the flavor of the homemade vegetable stock, which I made using some of the scraps that we collect here in the teaching kitchen. But then also flavors our dish there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to stir in our beans. Let those get warmed up. Again, just a can of white beans that we drained and rinsed.
I feel like beans are so underestimated. Like there's
absolutely.
Just, I feel like people are always asking for ways to kind of getting back to the processed meat thing.
Mm-hmm.
How do I get away from the sausage? How do I get away from these deli meats? And scrambled eggs, mix some cottage cheese in, melt that down to get more protein, add some black beans. Like it's just so easy. Add some salsa, it kind of just helps to broaden that horizon with different options, but they're so cheap, 90 cents a can. You rinse them off really good. You have them in the fridge ready to go.
Yeah. What can you buy for 90 cents now? Nothing at the grocery store, right? Versus, a can of black beans or any kind of bean, 90 cents. It's about 1.5 cups of beans, which is what we got in here, also mixed in with our whole wheat pasta in here. So we get the nice color from the greens. The beans kind of blend themselves in there. Again, this pasta we did cook before. And then we're just going to put some finishing touches on that. The first of which is a nice little squeeze of lemon juice.
Mm-hmm. And you did the whole grain pasta too.
Yes, and we did whole grain pasta, which we can definitely talk about. So I think that whole wheat pasta and whole grain pasta have come a long way.
Yeah, they have.
I think a couple years ago, they kind of had a bad rap because they were kind of like chewy and dense, and they've gotten a lot better. Even if they're still just made of, regular old whole wheat flour, they've gotten a lot better.
There's also like people come to me and they say, well, my husband hates whole grain pasta or they won't do it. So then you end up doing 2 different types of pasta with dinner. And I think also that's where you have to bend and kind of just compromise. And if somebody doesn't do whole grain, maybe doing a high protein Barilla pasta or chickpea pasta or trying out all the different types, right? The benefit is the fiber and the protein. So
absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of different kind of pastas out there. And every so often, if you still want to enjoy the white pasta, that's fine. You could make the same dish. You could make it with white pasta. And I would love the fact that you're getting beans and the greens in there. And so the last thing that we're going to add, I'm going to turn the heat down on this just slightly. I'm going to grab my trusty friend again, Parmesan cheese here. Kind of like pound for pound. Let's say you were debating adding a teaspoon of Parmesan cheese or a teaspoon of salt. The Parmesan cheese is kind of giving us that nice like salty flavor, but with less sodium kind of per unit, however you want to compare them. So we can be, I would say, this recipe, grand total it makes 4 servings. It calls for 6 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese. It's a tablespoon and a half per serving. Maybe that's a little more cheese flavor than you're looking for here. But again, with that microplane, you can get a very nice, this makes for a very nice presentation when you can get the shredded cheese right on top of the pasta there. And if you feel like this pasta, like, we got the white and we got the green in here. Like if you feel like it's a little monotone for you, you can absolutely add some other, tomato, sun-dried tomatoes, especially, or like a roasted red pepper, right out. Ooh, some mushrooms. Again, right out of the jar. No reason that you have to go and dry your own, sun-dry your own tomatoes. So we get that nice little garnish there. We can zoom back in and look at that because I think that looks pretty show-worthy. That cheese will kind of melt on top as we go here. Timer is about to go off for our chicken, so we're pretty good. So grand total, That pasta took me 15 minutes to make.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Obviously, the
asking,
pasta was already cooked,
yeah.
but if you're a good multitasker,
right.
pot of water going on one side for boiling your pasta, start to cook those veggies as soon as the pasta's cooked, dump it right into the pot here.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody was also asking if you need to use low-fat cheese. That's up to you.
Yeah.
Doing a low-fat cheese, so the difference between low-fat, reduced fat, whole fat, is the saturated fat and calorie content. So if you're somebody that has elevated LDL or total cholesterol, you're looking to lower that, or you're looking to lose weight, reduce risk of cardiovascular disease, then yeah, definitely choose a low-fat cheese, or maybe even just skip the cheese altogether. You could add a little bit more olive oil, and then you could add more veggies in. So definitely tailor that to be whatever you need it to be. But you know, most dairy products should be a reduced fat or a low fat. But for me, cottage cheese, I can't do low fat. I need whole fat so that the curds aren't so dry. So we kind of have to pick and choose what we're willing to compromise with that. But a low fat cheese would be a great option, like a low fat mozzarella or, skim mozzarella.
Absolutely. I mean, Parmesan cheese inherently is pretty low in fat. That's why it's a solid block rather than like a loose kind of cheese, versus like the opposite end of the spectrum, right, which is like a brie or a goat cheese, higher fat content. That's why it's so soft. So yeah, I did just shut the oven off. The chicken tenders are done, but I'm going to keep them in there so they stay warm. Our pasta's done. The last recipe that we're going to do tonight is this homemade ranch dressing. I think actually kind of this is the star of the show. So what do we got going on in this ranch dressing? It's only a couple ingredients. Most of them are spices, and we're just going to make them in a mason jar. No need to dirty a bowl or a food processor or a blender or anything. So I got my mason jar here. Add ingredients one at a time. I think we can zoom in on the cutting board as we add things. So our first and primary ingredient is yogurt. And again, we're talking about our dairy, right? So this is our low-fat, plain Greek yogurt. Why do we like Greek yogurt? Tends to be, compared to regular yogurt, tends to be higher in protein, lower in sugar. But even if you can't find Greek yogurt, just a low-fat yogurt is a great base for this, compared to, again, sorry to burst any bubbles, but those store-bought dressings, the ranch, the blue cheese, the Caesar, is primarily oil-based. And if it's oil-based, then the primary nutrient that's contributing is fat. And again, it's not that fat is the bad guy, but if we can try to find a way to sneak in some extra protein, which is usually something that people are trying to do, how easy is it to do it in salad dressing?
And milk gets such a bad rap. Milk is one of those things now that's lumped into that category of stay away from, right? Everybody's changing over to the almond milks and the oat milks, and there's no need to do that. So if you don't tolerate regular milk or animal products, then that's one thing. But doing, regular Greek yogurt or doing regular cow's milk, 1% reduced fat, is totally fine. Actually, very protective against many different types of cancer too. And helps with bone density, especially people who are entering menopause or after breast cancer treatment, and now they're on a hormone medication to suppress estrogen. So again, these things are very important to incorporate into the diet in moderation. Don't be afraid.
Absolutely. And so I've kind of done, the other ingredient that I just added into there was a little bit of sour cream. I kind of did a 3-to-1 ratio. So it's 3/4 of a cup of yogurt, 1/4 cup of sour cream. Again, a reduced fat sour cream. And then our liquid component to actually make this a little bit looser is some buttermilk. That's what I've got going on in here. So a little bit of a misnomer. Buttermilk is not fattier than normal milk. Most buttermilk is actually non-fat or reduced fat. It's called buttermilk because it's basically milk that has gone through a controlled curdling so that it has a little bit like of a thicker, more sour texture, almost halfway between milk and butter. And of course, we love to use it in things like a buttermilk ranch, or, there's buttermilk pancakes, great opportunity to increase your flavor. I'm going to pour that right into my jar here. And that is really the basis of our dressing. We are going to add a couple more ingredients. So I've got a small amount of apple cider vinegar, only about a teaspoon. That vinegar kind of helps balance out with its acidity. It helps balance out some other things. And then I've got a little bit of sugar here, really not much. In this whole mason jar, it's only 3/4 of a teaspoon of sugar. So really not much that we're going to add into there. Just, we need some sweetness to kind of help balance things out. And then we're going to add some spices, which is really what gets us to tasting like a ranch dressing. So Of course, we got a little bit of salt that we're going to add into there and a little bit of black pepper. But then we're going to add some garlic, very classic addition to our dish there, as well as some onion powder. Do that. Then we've got some dry parsley here. That's going to go in. And then finally, some dried chives. Can sometimes be a little harder to find, so you can use fresh, absolutely.
Fresh chives probably even better.
Yeah. And then all we're going to do is really tightly screw that lid on there. And then I'm just going to shake this for a couple minutes. Got a good grip on here. I'd say if you're going to involve your kids in this process, maybe make sure they got a good grip. I'll stop talking.
No, yeah, you're good.
Beautiful. That's it. That's how you make homemade ranch dressing. And if we compare this to, like, you know, we're throwing shade at some brands tonight. We compared this to like Hidden Valley. All right, we compared this to a leading brand of ranch dressing.
Yes, we did.
How about that? And so here was kind of the difference. So first of all, our serving size was a little bit bigger. Their recommended serving size is somewhere between 1 to 2 tablespoons. Ours is 2 tablespoons.
Yep.
What did ours end up being?
It was lower calories and lower fat content.
Yeah, absolutely.
Strictly because of the non-fat plain yogurt, right? The non-fat Greek yogurt. And then all the benefits added with the herbs and the spices and things that we're adding in, right? So many people want to take a pill or take a supplement to reap the benefit. But if you can add turmeric, if you can add oregano, if you can add these spices to your food, you're getting all of the benefit from the food source.
Yeah. Not to mention, now the primary nutrient in here instead of fat is protein.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So using it for veggies, right? Using it on a wrap.
Yeah.
Using it with your pizza that you like, dipping your pizza, you know, in the ranch dressing or the ranch dip. So
perfect. Yeah. And I can see if I can angle this in so you can see a little bit of what's going on in the jar, but I'm going to put some of it out into a bowl later. But I mean, you can you dip a spoon into it and it has the exact same texture as ranch dressing.
How long would you keep that like in the fridge?
Probably about a week.
Okay.
The main thing is that dairy, like anything else, it does have a shelf life.
Yeah.
And especially because we've combined a couple different types of dairy with something acidic, the apple cider vinegar in this case, I wouldn't mess around with it too long. You can always give it the smell test, but a week is probably about where we're at there.
Okay.
So perfect. All right, we're coming up at around 6:30. I know we have until 7, and I'm sure there'll be questions.
Yep.
Actually, do we have any questions now? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to plate up some of our food so it looks nice and pretty here.
So somebody asked about the recipes, but we're going to send those out to everyone after. There were a couple in the Q&A. So what about corn chips, taco chips?
Great question.
So I know we mentioned that in the beginning. Those are fine too. So if you can choose a low sodium option, reduced sodium chip, I mean, that's great. But that's awesome. Again, what is the corn chip going to help you consume? Is that going to help you get avocado in your diet? Is that going to help you get tomatoes for the lycopene? Is that going to help you, I don't know, whatever else you would pair with that? Black beans.
Absolutely.
So absolutely, corn chips are totally fine. Thoughts on chickpea protein pastas? I love them, actually. I think the texture is awesome.
I might even have a box in here. Let's see.
Of they have Bonza, like there's Bonza brand and things like that. But
excellent call out. We're not sponsored.
Yeah, not at all. Nope. All right. So for 2 ounces, for the serving size, 8 grams of fiber. 8 grams of dietary fiber. So
it's actually probably more than the whole wheat pasta.
Absolutely. And 20 grams of protein.
Yeah.
So that's huge, right?
What do a lot of people aim for? Usually they're saying, 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal. Varies per person, of course, but do that. Like that's like basically your protein goal for the meal. It's really impressive.
Right. And people that live alone, like I talk to, patients all the time that live by themselves and they're like, I don't want to do all this cooking to have so much food left over that I'm going to waste. So if you need to just go with a Bonza pasta or a chickpea pasta and pair it with some frozen broccoli, that's still a very balanced meal.
Absolutely.
You're getting your protein, your fiber, you're filling yourself up, less waste. So don't overthink. Just try to do the best you can.
Especially the pasta, right? Like I grew up in a family of 4. So when we had pasta for dinner, we cooked the whole box so that everyone got pasta and then there were leftovers, right? But then moving out on my own, and now that it's just me and my partner at home, right? Like I realized, I can cook half a box of pasta. Yeah. So I'm not left with a huge amount of leftovers, right? opening up that box does not change the shelf life. Get a piece of tape on there so it doesn't fly open in your pantry. But you don't have to cook the whole box of pasta at once. One of those like things that like never even occurred to me until. Oh, absolutely. We can talk about that. So access to the in-person classes. Well, first of all, my favorite thing to tell people about these classes is that they're free.
That's awesome.
I know. So the in-person classes here at the Teaching Kitchen are offered free of charge to patients. The only thing that you need is a referral from a Yale-affiliated provider. So it could be one of the members of your team over at Smilow. A dietitian could enter it for you. Your doctor could enter it for you. But it also could be if you see someone in literally any other department, they can give you a referral here to the Teaching Kitchen. Classes offered free of charge. This stuff that we're doing here tonight, these are recipes directly that we do with patients in the kitchen here. These chicken tenders we do during our snacks class and are always a big hit for people. And so you're going to get the same exact principles. You might be in a class with people who aren't necessarily, other Smilow patients. We get a mixture of weight loss, heart and vascular patients, all people who can benefit from this kind of education, just building that confidence in the kitchen. So all that you would need is a referral from your provider. We can definitely send out, when we send out everything tomorrow, the recipes, I have a little flyer that we can send out as well that includes a little section that you can hand it right to your doctor. There's a little blurb on there that says, how do I refer a patient? And they'll be able to get you in.
Yeah. The great thing is that these are all very, these recipes can be adjusted and changed, right? So if somebody had surgery, colon surgery, you can't tolerate greens, like there's always alternatives. So that's also key to finding a resource. So talking to a dietitian at your center or, asking for a referral from your primary care to talk to a dietitian to go over how you can adjust and change things so that you're not avoiding or limiting nutrients that you're consuming. You're just trying to adjust based on what your diet, what your body can tolerate.
Absolutely. So, all right, let's, we can zoom in on the middle here. I'll move our plates. So we've got our pasta. I'll plate it up very lovely here. I mean, this, like, if you put this down on your table in front of your family and everyone kind of help themselves, like, perfect, dinner, done. One or two pots maybe, and then you're good. And then also, I mean, you could nothing says you can't have chicken tenders for dinner, right? But these great after school snack, right? They're crispy. You pile them up on here, especially if, again, you make these chicken tenders, you make a big batch in advance, and then you can freeze them and then reheat them in your air fryer, the microwave even if you wanted to. But and then that ranch dressing, you make a batch of it at the beginning of the week. It's ready to go for you or your kids or whoever for when they come home from school or work. And so you get these like very lovely dishes here.
Yeah, and even lunch boxes the next day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Who says kids can't have, mine would eat them cold, dipped in this dip. So trying to find alternatives, right, to the deli meat is trying to do more things like this.
Yep, I even remember back when I was in school, like kids would bring like Lunchables, right?
Yeah.
There were cold chicken nugget Lunchables. I wasn't a huge fan, right? But these would be so much better because they're actually the texture of like a real chicken tender versus like whatever they were putting in there.
Thinking outside the box.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions or anything come through? We moved through these recipes pretty quick, so.
It's where the classes are. They're here, right?
Yeah, so the classes are here. We should, I guess, define where here is. We're in North Haven. The Teaching Kitchen is at 8 Divine Street. Right across the way here at 6 Divine. That is one of the Smilow locations. You may be not necessarily going there. In addition to the classes being free, parking on site here is free. You don't have to get anything validated. There's no parking pass or anything. We are along a major bus route that does go into New Haven. So that's an option for folks. And then if you have an insurance company that will cover transportation to appointments, Veo is usually like one of the transportation companies. Because the Teaching Kitchen appointment will show up in your MyChart like any other appointment, you can actually get your transportation to and from the kitchen covered by your insurance. Yeah, the classes are free, but you can even get your transportation covered. Cool. Yeah. So we'll love that. Yeah, I've had a couple of patients take advantage and that's awesome. So awesome. Anything else?
Classes listed to sign up. These classes are a hit.
So you're not able to self-enroll for the classes just because you do need the referral to attend. It's basically like getting referred to a doctor's appointment. So just like you can't schedule for the doctor, you can't self-schedule here. But I have an awesome scheduler who manages not only getting new people enrolled in the class, but if there are ever any drop-offs or anything, she maintains a really great wait list. So typically it can take from time of getting referred to getting into the class. There might be a couple weeks between when that referral first gets entered and when we can get you in. But if there's a drop off on the list, she's calling people and getting people in. So we want as many people to come to classes as we can.
And not another question, but more of a comment.
Sure.
Next seminar with fish. That would be a good one.
Absolutely. I know we did our first one. We did a shrimp stir fry, but I think we could definitely.
But to do like a salmon or something, or
especially as we get into the warmer months.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I always associate fish with the colder months. I don't know why, but yeah, as we get warmer, absolutely, we can do something with fish. That'd be great.
Yep. Great. Great questions.
All righty. Perfect. Anything else? And folks, if you ever think of any questions, of course, all of the Smilow team are available to answer questions. But then we will make sure, like I said, we'll send out a flyer with the teaching kitchen information on it, which includes our email address. I am always happy to answer any kind of questions about the teaching kitchen, how you can get referred, all that kind of stuff. I'm always more than happy to answer those.
Yeah, if you're getting questions about that, like how to ask the doctor for a referral. Do you just ask them to refer to the cooking kitchen?
Yeah,
if they're not in Smilow, they might not.
Yeah. I will say we are still a relatively new program. So if you say teaching kitchen to them and they're like, what? Send me an email or give me a call. Like I said, we'll send out the contact info tomorrow. I'm always happy to share what we do with physicians. I just did a presentation today about the teaching kitchen to our stroke survivorship population, and they only recently found out about the kitchen. So we're still new, we're growing. Of course, the more people who find out, the longer the wait will be for classes. So we'll see about that. No, but if your doctor has ever any questions, send them my way. Like I said, the flyer that we're going to send out has a little box on it that says, how can I refer a patient? That's for your doctor. So they'll know exactly kind of where to look on how to refer you. Great. Anything else?
No, just thank you. Thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining. We'll get the recipes out tomorrow. We'll get the handouts tomorrow. Natalie's fantastic list we will send out tomorrow. And then we'll go from there. Maybe we'll hang out for another minute or two in case there's any questions.
Yeah.
But I think we are more or less wrapped up. So y'all are more than welcome to head out for the evening. A little bit after dinner time. So I hope whatever you're making at home is delicious. And then, yeah, we'll hang out for another minute before we wrap up here. I'm very excited to dive into to what we made here.
We had a question about grilling meat, too.
Oh, sure, about grilling meat. Let's talk about it.
What's your thoughts on grilling meat?
So from a culinary standpoint, we'll address that first, and then we can address the nutrition. Grilling meat, excellent way to develop flavor. Not always the most beginner friendly, very easy to overcook, but also sometimes people get really scared, so they undercook things on the grill. Anytime that you are grilling, even if you're using your own grill at home, you really want to make sure to really thoroughly clean it every time, right? Because stuff just does get stuck to those grates. So that is where I stand from a culinary perspective. I like grilling. I don't do it all the time. But then from a nutrition perspective, there is sometimes a concern that we have, especially when it comes to grilling meats and cancer risk. Yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, there is an increased risk of carcinogens and kind of, I think they're called polycyclic amines from cooking and charring your food. So again, there's no risk when cooking vegetables and grilling. It's when you're cooking meat at high temperatures and charring.
And you get like the blackened black char.
Exactly. So trying to limit that char, not getting that, the stripes.
The grill marks.
Yes, the grill marks. But again, grilling veggies, grilling meat, fish, just being very careful, maybe putting it on top of tin foil.
Well, and they also make those, I think they're copper. They make like grill mats.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where the heat still comes in. You get a little bit less of the char on there. I don't know if there's ever been a study on if doing that has been linked to a decreased risk, but certainly it will lead to less of the blackening on the meat. Yeah. And that blackening is what is associated with the increased cancer risk.
Yeah. Somebody asked quick breakfast ideas that avoid high processing.
Sure.
Oh, so many.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Breakfast tacos, corn tortillas, scrambled eggs and black beans, Greek yogurt with pomegranate seeds and granola. There's a lot about processing, right? Like highly processed, ultra processed, but many foods are processed, but still very nutrient dense and very healthy for us.
Yes.
So again, try not to overcomplicate. Even if you did, bagged oatmeal or steel cut oatmeal and threw some frozen blueberries in there, and added a little bit of nut butter or, sunflower seeds or something, that would be awesome. Whole grain bread, peanut butter, banana combination that I do most times.
Absolutely. Smoothies, of course, always a great choice.
Yep.
Another option I really love, we do it in our breakfast class here, is we do little, we do a breakfast class. Yeah. And so in that one of the standout favorites is we do little frittata egg bites, where what we do is we whisk together some eggs and some water. We cook some spinach, some onion and bell pepper, and we divvy that up into little muffin tins. Pour the egg mixture over the top and then bake them. 20 minutes, you get these nice little egg bites. I compare them in that class to, like, you go to Starbucks and you get the sous vide egg bites. First of all, they're like $6 for 2 egg bites, which is
fat content is crazy. High. I think it's 11 grams of saturated fat. Don't quote me on that. I forget what the number is.
Yeah, but comparatively, right? We make it at home. I think it tastes better. You can add any kind of mix-ins, right? Like I tell people, if you wanted, like, when we do that, we add a little bit of Parmesan and a little bit of feta cheese to those. But what we can also do is maybe go for more of like a cheddar broccoli situation, right? A little bit of cheddar cheese and then really finely chop some broccoli and cook that first.
Or red peppers.
Absolutely. So that's always a great option.
Remember that pesto thing?
Yeah. Like a pesto egg. And I was about to say, make your own breakfast sandwiches. And you can, let's say when you buy a package of English muffins, there's 6 English muffins in there. Let's say we can find a whole wheat English muffin. Then we cook up 6 eggs. Maybe we throw some spinach on there, whatever else we want to do. Maybe
try to keep off the bacon.
Yeah, try to keep off the bacon. Yes, excellent. But maybe a slice of cheese on there is okay, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're gonna do, if you want, maybe not with like the avocado, but like certainly like spinach and other vegetables that freeze pretty well, you could wrap up 6 breakfast sandwiches, like really tightly wrap them in plastic wrap. Stick them in your freezer.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
And then the night, maybe the night before, if you remember, you pull it out, and then in the morning you can like pop it in the microwave or the toaster oven or something, or take it right out of the freezer, pop it in the oven for like 20 minutes. It'll kind of come up. It'll be a nice warm breakfast sandwich for you, kind of ready to go. And then we've added some vegetables. We got a whole wheat English muffin. We get the protein from the egg and the cheese, like limitless combinations. And then you could fresh add the avocado to it or something, and then your condiments and whatever you want to add.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. I do a similar thing with breakfast burritos. I'll make them.
Probably what, $6 a day from stopping at,
well, Dunkin' Donuts is no longer the like cheap option for breakfast. You could, if you got a coffee and a sandwich from Dunkin' Donuts, it's probably like $12 now. Like it's not cheap anymore to go through the drive-through. So you're really not saving yourself that much money by going through the drive-through. But great question.
Yeah, we took off with those breakfast ideas.
Yeah. All righty.
Guys, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you all so much. We will get those resources sent out tomorrow for y'all. And then if there are any other questions, reach out to Natalie, reach out to myself. I'm more than happy to answer. I think we're going to dive in with some of our food here. All right, perfect. We're all good?
Yeah, there was one more question about recipes for irritable bowel syndrome.
Oh, sure.
It's just a little bit more specific. Irritable bowel syndrome is very broad. So if you tend to have problems with dairy, we could absolutely do non-dairy products instead. You could use like a, soy-based yogurt or
coconut yogurt.
Absolutely. If your IBS is flared by spices or acidity, you could keep out the lemon juice.
Or the garlic. In this case, sometimes raw garlic does not agree with people. Maybe just omit the raw garlic. Maybe try garlic powder, sometimes better tolerated.
Right.
We've also talked, and this will be the last thing we say. We've sometimes done like garlic infused oil is sometimes better tolerated by people, where you take oil in a pot on the stove, you warm it up, you throw whole garlic cloves into there. You want it and then you kind of let the garlic like steep into the oil, and then you strain it out. You get rid of the garlic. And then that oil has now picked up a little bit of garlic flavor, so you can saute with that without the stuff that's actually in the garlic, the FODMAPs, which Who can remember what FODMAP stands for? I can't.
I mean, I do, but
Okay,
yeah,
but you don't need to show off. Without the FODMAPs in there, the stuff that causes usually often causes the IBS trigger, but you should get the garlic flavor.
Yeah. So definitely we can tailor those, but I think reaching out to a dietitian to give you specific recipes for those,
Yeah, absolutely. I like to brag because we're part of digestive health here at the Teaching Kitchen. Right here at 8 Divine Street, there are many dietitians who would happily help you navigate any kind of those digestive symptoms in collaboration with, especially if you're a Smilow patient, in collaboration with the team at Smilow. So, fantastic.
All righty. Thanks, everybody.
Folks. Thank you all so much. Looking forward to hopefully the next time we're able to do this.
Let us know. Shop and chat with Max and Nat. We're happy to do it.
Have a great night, everyone. Bye. Stay warm. And then what we can do, Danielle, beautiful. And then we can hit the little leave meeting there.